One.
I'm Nina Ehara,
I'm Sydney Mellett.
and we're affiliated with Chapel Hill High School. We're interviewing Frank Rawley on May 26, 2016. We're conducting the interview in Mr. Rawley's home, and the people present are Mr. Rawley, Todd Mellett, Sydney Mellett, and Nina Ehara. We're conducting this interview for an AP government project for school.
Okay.
So, what is your date of birth?
My birth is 8 June 1923.
And which part of military did you serve for?
I'm sorry.
What part of military did you serve for?
What branch of the
Oh,
military
I was
did you
in the
serve?
Army, U.S. Army from the beginning. Actually, when they went in for examination, they found out I was flat-footed, so I became infantry. They were real quick like, and I stayed in infantry for about 4 years there.
And what was the highest rank you attained?
Full colonel.
And which war or conflict did you serve in?
What countries I served in?
Yeah, which war?
All right, okay. Of course, the United States, a good bit. And then left there, we went to Europe and joined the 3rd Army under Patton. Went across country there, and the war ended in Steyr, Austria. And then we became the Army of Occupation in Augsburg, Germany, which is right outside of Munich. Now, we also saw a lot of the atrocities there. The people who had been starved to death, the Germans had treated them very horribly, as you know. And then after staying there for quite a while, I came back to the States and actually got out of the Army, as most people did at that time. And then for about 2 years, I went back to Davidson College, finished up my degree, and entered the Army again. And we stayed in, well, actually, my wife and I stayed in a total of 60 years. So it was really a wonderful experience all the way through.
Okay. And could you tell us where you were born and where were you born?
Well, I was born in Pelham, North Carolina. It's right outside of Danville and Reidsville, out in the middle of nowhere.
And what was your childhood like? What was your childhood like?
What was your childhood like? Your
My
childhood,
Yeah.
growing up.
Well, I ended up being the comptroller for Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and that's under 3-star generals down there, which was really great. In fact, one of the generals, General Robert York, he left and went back to Tennessee when he retired and became a Baptist preacher. And we heard from him several times, but a wonderful man. But we had great generals and great people, but that was airborne, 82nd Airborne Division. And then later, I went back as a Corps comptroller.
And what were you doing before you began this occupation?
What was it?
What were you doing before you began this occupation? Did you have a job before this?
Oh, well, I came after I got out of the Army, you mean? Well, after I got out of the Army, I was at
No,
Fort Bragg.
before the Army. What did you do?
Before you
entered the Army.
Oh, before the Army?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I was civilian. I wasn't working anywhere, really,
Okay.
at that time. No. Army's been my life.
Uh-huh.
And did you enlist in the war or were you drafted?
Was an officer? Is that what you said?
Yeah, did you enlist in the war or were you drafted by the United States?
If you're saying, did I enjoy that? Is that
Did
what
you
you're saying?
enlist or were you drafted into the war? Did you enlist into the war or did they draft you? Did you choose
Well,
to go?
Well, in the Army, is that what you want to know?
Uh-huh.
Where I was in the Army?
Yeah.
Okay. Of course, we went across Europe,
Uh-huh.
1,060 miles from Normandy to Steyr, Austria.
Uh-huh.
And we backed up. We were in the Army of Occupation, which was in Augsburg, Germany, which meant that we controlled the German communications there. We took over and helped them get back on their feet. We had to examine all the buildings there to be sure there weren't people that were going to cause harm to us. But it was quite an experience, really. And my division moved from there to go to 42nd Division down in Vienna. At that time, I got loose, and I went back to several places, including Bad Tolz, Germany, which was the 3rd Army headquarters. And as a first lieutenant at that time, I was the finance officer for the 3rd Army. And then the 3rd Army broke up, of course, after that, and we all came home. Came back and finished up at Davidson.
What types of training did you receive?
Well, I had basic training, was at Camp Wheeler, Georgia, which is actually with mortars and mines and that type of thing. And after that, I went to, the next thing, of course, was the 82nd Airborne Division. And there, first was the 71st Infantry Division, and there we just had regular basic training to get us ready to go overseas with the division. I was a platoon commander at that time, and actually I was a platoon commander of a, I'm sorry, anti-tank company, excuse me, I'm sorry. It was an anti-tank company. And then I stayed in that till after the war was over. And at that time I was a PX officer and a few other things there in Germany with the division. Then from there I left them and went to the 82nd to the finance business, and I was in finance until I came home from Europe. And it worked out extremely well. Good.
So, what was the toughest part of the training? What was the hardest part of the training?
Hardest?
Yes, hardest part of the
It was
training.
all a dream for me. I was in a small town, and I was my aunts raised me, so to get in the Army was a real treat. I went down 2 hours early so I wouldn't miss the bus. And it was that way all the way through. I really enjoyed my time, and my wife did too. She was a good, wonderful Army wife. And every time we went somewhere, she'd take over and get into women's clubs and do things of that sort. And we were in the Pentagon for 4 years there. And she worked with the ladies up there. It worked out real well. And we came from the set up there. We went back to Fort Bragg in Airborne Division again in Corps, and I finished up there.
And how quickly did you adapt to military life? How quickly did you get used
Encourage
to?
people to get in it?
No. Did you get used to like military life?
Did you find it easy, like, to adapt to being in the military, or was it a hard transition for you?
I'm sorry I'm not getting what I should tell you.
Like, was it hard to leave your family?
Oh, no.
No. Okay.
Well, when you go to the 82nd Airborne Division, you have to be a paratrooper. And I was 41 years old when I went through training. And I had several wonderful experiences there, though. One was we had a new pilot for the plane, one of the small planes. And he was supposed to have lowered the motor and up the tail, and he did it reverse because this is the first time he jumped anybody. And my chute wrapped around the tail of the plane, and this was about as near a deal. But I didn't know that till I got on the ground. The safety officer got me on that. But Airborne was great. It was wonderful, wonderful people. They're professionals, every one of them.
Okay. Where and how long did you serve?
How long?
Yes.
I served, let's see. I served from 22. I got out of service in 70. So that was about I was in 30 years, excuse me. I'm 30 years of active duty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you on the front line usually?
I'm sorry.
Were you on the front line usually?
And with the 71st Infantry Division, we were under Patton. And yes, we were on the front lines all the way through. I was in an anti-tank company, and our purpose in life at that time was to hit the tanks and also to get the snipers. The snipers would be hidden in the towers and things of that sort, and we had a rather large missile that would fire into that and usually kill off the snipers real quick. But it was a great deal. I had three platoons of troops under me at that time. But we stayed that way till after the war was over, and then that's went to Augsburg, and we camped down there for the Army occupation.
What was your favorite thing to do when you were off duty?
Off duty?
Uh-huh.
Goof off. No, I travel. I'll have to admit I did a lot of traveling. I asked my boss in Regensburg, Germany at that time, if I could go on a little leave and go to Paris. He said, yeah. He thought it was going to be for the weekend, but I stayed almost 3 weeks. When I got back, he wanted to know where I'd been. So I couldn't get transportation back. Of course, that's not true. But when I did, I hitchhiked through, not only did I go into Paris, but I also went to Scotland, Ireland, and London, and then went back to Paris again. The lady at Paris at that time was from my hometown, and she was getting married, and she wanted to know if we could help her get rid of all these things she had on hand. So it was a wonderful experience there, of course. But the reason they didn't court-martial in those days for being AWOL, all the troops were coming home, and nobody wanted to stay there any longer than they had to. And to court-martial, they had to stay, that those people had to stay on longer. But it was great. It was wonderful.
What was your most fond memory? What's the best memory you have of being on duty?
Being on duty?
Uh-huh. What was your favorite memory?
I think being the comptroller of Fort Bragg. We had 3-star generals, and we, of course, as a comptroller, we controlled the finances for the post. And it just happened that my boss down at 3rd Army was an old friend of mine from Korea. And he controlled the money from all 5 armies, and what he had surplus he had to get rid of, and he'd call me up and we would help him to do that. So we practically rebuilt Fort Bragg under his supervision. It worked out good. His name was Ted, but really a great man.
Did you keep in touch with your friends after you served? Do you keep in touch Do you still talk to them?
Am I in touch with them?
Yeah, that's it.
No, most of them died off on me. That's the bad part. Yeah, we had division get-togethers in Washington a couple of times, and it worked out well there too. They'd kind of bring us update. I only know of 2 officers now that were with me that still alive. Of course, they're all getting pretty old.
Yeah. Did you speak to your family a lot?
My family?
Yeah. Would you speak
I
to
have
them
a
a lot?
son that's a major in the finance corps. He's in the reserves, and he spent about 5 years in the service. But he's up in Williamsburg and has a farm up there. But I have a daughter, of course, in Lynchburg, who's married to a dentist, and also Kathy is the preacher's wife over in Wake Forest.
How old were you when the war ended?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Or where were you when it ended?
Well, when the war ended, I was in Germany. In Austria, actually, we pulled back into Germany and stayed there as army occupation.
Was it nice reconnecting with people afterwards that you hadn't seen for a while?
Other tours I had. Well, I've served in, after I left there, I got out of the service for a while and then went back in again. And when I did, my family went to Japan. We stayed in Japan for 4 years, which was outstanding, tremendous. And then we had, from there, came home, went to Dominican Republic for 2 years. Then from there, went to, back in the States again, for quite a while. But got around a little bit.
What was one of the worst memories that you have about combat?
Yeah, I really didn't have any bad kind of deals, because to me, it was wonderful. I loved the Army. My wife loved the Army. My family loved the Army. And we all really enjoyed it. It was great.
What was it like readjusting to life after the Army?
After I was actually down at Fort Bragg when I retired, and I'd worked with First Citizens Bank Trust Company, and handling payrolls and the money that they got in. And I was offered a job here as personnel director for First Citizens Bank. So I was there about 14 years. And then after that, I got into real estate for another 10 years. And I've been just taking it easy since that time.
Have you reunited with people since returning? Have you reunited with people that you fought with since returning?
No, well, don't see them too much. We have a letter we write to each other. No, we know the addresses and know the telephone numbers. And there is an organization that we work through. And I was also active with the MOAA, the Military Officers Association. I was president of that for about 5 years here in Raleigh. And we kept things going until the war started again, and then had other people to come in and take over.
Are you affiliated with any military organizations?
I'm still, MOAA is the Military Officers Association. It's Army, Navy, and Air Force, all of them, and we meet once a month. And they do a great job. And we also try to encourage the ROTC students. In fact, we have a fund that we get money into, and once a year we divvy that money up and send people, help them to finish up their schooling. That's the main thing, though.
What about the USO?
USO, I've been there since '09. The first day they opened up, I sit in the office there, and actually, the people came down from Washington to open up the USO here. And when they did, I was sitting in the seat while they were having the meeting over at the headquarters, but I've been with them ever since they got opened up.
Is there any other organizations that you work with?
Any other? No.
No.
No, not right.
How
Except
did
my church, of course.
how did your wartime experience affect your life?
My wife?
Your life. How did your wartime experience affect your entire life?
It was my life. It was my life.
Yeah.
And everything worked out. And I'm very fortunate the fact that the Lord provided, and I just went every notch I filled in. It worked out exactly right. Ended up the right way. I came out alive. That's the main thing, I guess. But we did have a lot of friends that did not, of course.
What was the most valuable thing that you learned from your military service?
To cooperate and to live a clean life, really. A lot of people don't think that's true, but it is very true.
Would you like to add anything for future generations to hear that are viewing this interview? Would you like to add anything that we didn't talk about already?
I don't understand what.
Would you like to add anything that we haven't talked about?
No, but it's the fact that it's a wonderful life, and certainly encouraging. Of course, airborne. Once you get into airborne, it's a different life completely. They stick together and they work together. And we did go down to the Dominican Republic, and we were there for about 2 years. The communists were getting ready to take it over when we went in. But that was a wonderful experience too.
What was your favorite place to travel to?
Favorite place?
Yeah, that you...
Seattle, Washington. We were Seattle. Now, Seattle was the repo depot for the people going to be in the Army in Korea. And we would have a whole boat load, 2,500 people. We'd put those aboard the ship going over, and we'd also have the ships coming in. And for about that 2 years, we opened up an old post, and we processed those troops back home. It worked out real well there. But when my wife, we lived on the main post, and my oldest daughter was born there. So we have a lot of fond memories of Fort Lawton, Washington.
Okay, so that was the last question. I just want to say thank you for your service, and I appreciate you doing this interview.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your
Thank you so
service.
much, y'all, for being here today.
Thank you.